Hey everybody, it's Friday, so it must be a buy day. I'm Eric Pappenfus, coming from you live here at the Midtown Scholar Sort Room. And as promised, I want to take you on the second half of my family's summer vacation today. First half in upstate New York, we saw some of the finds last week. Well, this week we're going to look at some of the finds we found in Ontario, Canada. Let's get right to it. Now, as I'm getting these books out, let me tell you the best way to watch these videos is by going over to YouTube and liking and subscribing to the Midtown Scholar Bookstore channel there. We've got over 1,000 subscribers. If you subscribe, it'll send you alerts whenever these new buy days come on Fridays. And today is our 20th episode, so you can see all 20 of them archived over on YouTube. Well, we went up in Ontario, Canada to a place called Kirchner, which is next to a smaller town called Waterloo. And we stopped there to look at some of the local bookstores, and we went book browsing, and we found an old grist mill. And by this grist mill in Waterloo, Canada, there was a historic marker, and it explained that the town of Kirchner had originally been called Berlin. And during World War I, they understandably had to change the name to something a little bit more patriotic. But the entire town and the entire area was founded, according to the historic marker, by Mennonite farmers from central Pennsylvania, right here in Cumberland and Lancaster County. I had no idea. And the story goes that a company called the German Company bought 60,000 acres of land right there in Ontario from the heirs of Joseph Brant, who was the great Mohawk leader who sided with the British during the American Revolution and was given these lands to sell as in part compensation. Well, they apparently paid $10,000, and they took the $10,000 in silver coins hidden in drums, in barrels, in a by-Conestoga wagon right here from Harrisburg and Lancaster all the way up to pay for the land there in Ontario. A fascinating story. Now, they were farmers, and they cleared the land, and they established the grist mill, and they needed ways to basically store wheat and grind wheat into bread. And it was amazing because at the next bookstore we visited, we came across an amazing old book here, which I will show you, which was about that very topic. It was about the conservation of grains and how to protect your grains. It was written by a very famous French scientist who, during the 18th century, developed all sorts of ways for preventing crops from spoiling. And let me show you some of the amazing plates in this old book. All of them were about sort of drying the grain and heating the grain. If you look at this plate, you'll see the bellows and the modern storage system to kill parasites and to help the grain be preserved. Now, this is exactly the type of book that may have come by Conestoga wagon. And in the front of the book, there was a little note that says, Dear Harvey, from 1928, this book was brought by my ancestors to the area. So did it come from central Pennsylvania? We may never know. It did come to us from a little bookstore called Balfour Books in Toronto, which was our next stop. And Balfour was a great academic bookstore. It's been there for a long time in Toronto. And I used my trick, Amanda, which was there were these books that looked like they needed repair behind the counter. I said, hey, what is that book with the ruined spine? Can I see it? And they said, well, we don't really know what to do with it. It's poor condition. And that's how I came up with this great book on ancient grains. Well, while we were in Toronto, we also went to a very high-end bookstore. It was an amazing store because it had bookcase after bookcase after bookcase of books on Canadian history. First bookstore I've ever been to which had no American history, all Canadian history, and rightly so. But amidst the bookcases, we found this amazing book, which was called A Tour of Hartford and Quebec, and it was a book that was written by the Yale professor Benjamin Silliman in 1820. This is the New Haven published copy about his travels up to Canada. And here's a fun fact. When I was in graduate school and met my wife, she was teaching British history for a professor named Linda Colley, and they were doing a chapter on American views of England in the early 19th century. And Benjamin Silliman also wrote a book about his travels in England, and I got to impersonate him for the class, and that was one of the first things that we did together. So I've always had a soft spot for Benjamin Silliman. He discovered meteors and dinosaurs, and he was the first professor at Yale to allow women to attend his classes. And he did this very early in the 19th century, long before Yale was coeducational. So good for him. And what's interesting is this book has actual female ownership. It was owned by Elizabeth Calverley. Don't know who that is, but maybe Elizabeth audited one of Benjamin Silliman's classes, and maybe she didn't. I was reading this book up in Canada, and I was looking at the index, and would you believe it, but there was a very important chapter on caution to strangers in Canada. So I figured I'd better read that while I was up there. And I read the caution to strangers in Canada, and it basically says, soon after arriving, almost every stranger finds his stomach and bowels deranged. And that was the term Silliman used for an upset stomach. And according to him, it had to do with the diet in Canada. Don't trust the food. They didn't drink enough tea, they ate late in the night, and they ate too much junk food. And so you might get derangement of the stomach. And I have to say, this thought occurred to me that perhaps I should share with you my favorite Canadian junk food, which is ketchup chips. Amanda, have you ever had ketchup chips?
I have not.
It's a distinctly Canadian snack food. Basically, Canadians love their ketchup, and unlike American ketchup, it's highly vinegary ketchup, so it tastes nothing. You get Heinz ketchup in Canada, it's a totally different recipe than ketchup in America. So I must confess, I probably ate too many of these late at night, and I should have heeded Benjamin Silliman's warning. We're going to share those ketchup chips with the rest of the staff. All right, we're going to end with a funny book today, and I want to again thank our friends at Mondragon Books. They gave me this on my way up to Canada when we stopped by Lewisburg, just like last week, but this week's book was even better. It's Mime Time. And yes, this is a book which teaches you 45 complete routines for everyone. Now, you can either mime by yourself or you can mime in groups. And one of the things I particularly like about this book is that it has perhaps the most Canadian mime routine you could possibly want, the hockey goon. All right, imagine a scene, Amanda. Here we are. Scene. In revenge, Wally skates behind another opponent and trips him, clobbers him with a stick, and then jumps up on him, up and down, smashing the poor guy to a pulp. A ref blows the whistle, and Wally stops. Who, me? He says, I wasn't doing anything. The hockey goon mime routine. Can you get anything more Canadian than that? So that was our Canadian trip. We will be back next week with another edition of Buy Day every Friday at noon. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to us on YouTube, Midtown Scholar Bookstore.